You and actually a couple of people were talking last week about the concept of Stipe Miocic having an interim heavyweight title fight against Jon Jones. You know, they're the two biggest names really active without fights at heavyweight right now. Jon Jones took to Twitter and said, the greatest heavyweight of all time versus the greatest light heavyweight of all time. I'm game, right? So it seems like he's down for that fight.
Go ahead, Anthony. What do you think?
Man, I know where this is going to go. The second I talk about Jon Jones, the world fucking explodes. But
why? Jon Jones, you're just being a hater?
Yeah, it's always I'm just being a hater. Jon Jones got the worst timing ever. Everyone was really.
What do you mean? Timing with the fight or timing with his strikes in a fight?
No, with his fight announcements and his tweets. Like, everyone wants Jon Jones to fight. They've been, the public has been just begging for it. We want to see Jon at heavyweight. We want to see Jon at heavyweight. And then we don't hear anything from him. We don't see anything from him. There's no fight announcements. He's not talking about anything until the heavyweight fight. Then Francis Ngannou gets injured, has all this contract dispute or whatever he's got going on. Cyril Gane loses. And then now all of a sudden he wants to it's like he waited for this huge bubble that's been growing for him to fight to burst. Because now, I love Stipe. I just don't think that that's as big of a fight as he could have had in the heavyweight division.
It's not.
It's very smart of him because it's the best matchup for him. Likely, I would say that Stipe's out of the top 3 or 4 guys in the division. Stipe's the easiest fight for him.
Oh, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I agree with what you're saying.
I'm not saying it's easy. I think it's the easiest matchup.
I mean, he is. Stipe Miocic, I would say, the greatest heavyweight of all time. He has the most title defenses, of course.
Without a doubt.
I agree with you.
Of course, Ngannou beat him, but they're only 1-1. So realistically, they should do the rubber match. But I think, for Jones, I think it's a good way to get him back. I don't think Ngannou's going to fight this year. He said he's not going to. Plus, he's going to have surgery as well. So he's probably going to be out for a while. So the UFC has to keep it moving. It's good for the promotion. It's good for the fans to have an interim title. So they should do that. So they should do Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic, interim title. That gets Jon Jones back in the octagon, right? That gets him fighting at heavyweight like he said he was going to do. And then if he wins that fight, he has the unification against Ngannou if they come to an agreement with the UFC. I think that's the perfect way. And also for Jon Jones, if I'm his manager, that gives him a warm-up fight. And now, by the way, as I just said, Stipe Miocic is not a fucking warm-up fight at heavyweight. You know what I mean? He is the greatest heavyweight ever.
Man, I don't see. I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion, and I really hope that Stipe doesn't see this and think that I'm shitting all over him, because I'm not. Stipe knows I love him. I think I agree with you. I think he's the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. Stipe's barely a heavyweight. Like, I weigh more than Stipe does right now.
Do you think so?
Absolutely.
Really? Yeah. What do you weigh right now? That's the real question.
Like 235.
Yeah, but what does Stipe weigh in Harrison? Just look that up on his last few fights if you don't mind. But he's going to be like 240, right?
No, he was like low 230s. He's gotten super lean over his last 3 fights. And I've been me and Stipe have the same manager, and I tell Lloyd constantly, like, you need to tell Stipe he needs to go to 205. Not that I want to deal with that goddamn problem. But he can make, he's not like him and Jan Blachowicz are, Jan probably outweighs Stipe by 10 pounds right now. So it's just, we want Jon at heavyweight, and everyone talks, we want to see how he does at heavyweight. So then we get him there, and he's essentially fighting a 205er that doesn't want to cut weight. So it's I don't think it's a real assessment of what we're going to get. I guess we get to see how Jon moves around and how he's carrying the weight, and if there's has he lost a step because he hasn't been fighting, or is there ring rust, or there is a lot of things we'll learn from it. I would just like to see him versus like a real heavyweight, like a real large one, because everyone's so worried about how he handles the big guys. So let's put him in there with a big guy.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. I totally agree, because a lot of light heavyweights, as you know, right now you're in 230s. A lot of, like, Quinton Rampage Jackson used to get up to like 250 back in the day. Crazy. All right, fair enough. He would put on, a lot of fat, but he cut down from 230 or so. I even used to get up to 230 sometimes. My heaviest, when I was coaching the Ultimate Fighter, I stepped on the scale one day, I was 233. It was not a pretty sight. It did not look good, but still I was 233. And Jon Jones probably walks around 230. I would have said he's a big man. And the thing is about a light heavyweight going up to heavyweight, or anytime you see somebody switching a weight class, jumping up a weight class, it's just saying, I'll jump up and take you on and going for it, not going away for a year, putting on 20 pounds of muscle. That kind of takes away from the sexiness of it. Do you know what I'm saying? Because now he's saying he's walking around at 260 pounds. I mean, if he is, it's going to be very intriguing to see how his body's going to perform over 5 rounds at 260 pounds. There will be some improvements. He will be stronger. Definitely. That'll be one of the things. But I think in terms of his gas tank, it's going to have an effect. And his speed definitely will be compromised if he's put on an extra 20, 30 pounds. Right. So I am still curious to see how we do, even against someone like Stipe, that, as you say, is not the biggest heavyweight.
Well, and I think that matchup is intriguing. It's just,
yes,
I think all of this is very personal to me. Like, there's things that I want to see that I don't necessarily think I get by him fighting Stipe. Like, I think that for Stipe, especially with, he's taken some big shots, and obviously you can't knock anyone for getting knocked out by Francis Ngannou. If Francis Ngannou could land clean on an elephant, he might rock it. You know what I mean? It's just different. He's a different human. So I'm not knocking him for that. But
do you think, and I'm putting you on the spot here and you don't have to answer this question, but do you think the fact that Francis is, because he is an intimidating force, there's no question about it. We see the power. And yes, somebody as skilled as yourself and John and myself as well, you can look and you can see shortcomings in terms of the technique from Francis. Mm-hmm. However, there is still that sickening power that he has that is so terrifying. And do you think that's the reason why John hasn't come back yet? Do you think he's, the back of his mind, a little intimidated, or do you think he's just waiting for the perfect time?
I think he's waiting for the perfect time. I don't think John's afraid. I think that he didn't want Francis Ngannou to be his first fight. Which I can't.
Certainly seems like it.
Yeah, I can't knock him for that. And I think this works out perfectly where he can work his way in. And I think he would like to work his way into the division. And Stipe is that perfect guy as far as the size. He's a little heavier than the guys John's probably been fighting. But he's not a full size heavyweight that's cutting down to 265 like your Francis Ngannou's, your Cyril Gans, I'm maybe not financially, but like tactically, it makes a lot of sense. I'm not knocking John for the way he's managing it or the direction he's taken as far as who he's trying to get. It just doesn't do for me what I want to see out of John. Like, and it's not a terrible matchup for Stipe either. Like, Jon Jones is not a power striker. He's not a big puncher. Everything he does dangerous is from the waist down. So it's not bad for either guy. It just doesn't do anything very selfishly. I don't think I'll learn what I want to learn from that.
So for me with John, obviously, when I'm looking as a fan, I'm looking as a colleague, a former fighter. You've been in there with John. You went 5 rounds with the guy, so I would be remiss if I never asked you. And you just mentioned the power punching. He's not a power puncher. He's not a power striker. And maybe some of the kicks are powerful because he knocked out DC and kicks are different. But you're absolutely right. He's not a devastating puncher. He's technically very good, tactically very good, good wrestling. He's got the whole package.
I wouldn't even go that far.
In a lot
of that stuff, no. Like, I think if you, even after being, and I'm not taking anything away from him, he beat me fair and square, and he shut me down for sure. If you take each individual skill that John has, in my opinion, I don't think any of them are elite. If you're talking just boxing, I never felt like he was an elite boxer. He was just hard to get to. He didn't have
certainly with the
power.
Fingers.
Yeah, he didn't have crazy power in his hands. He wasn't crazy fast. He didn't set any traps. He wasn't tricky. He didn't show a lot of feints. If we're talking just wrestling stuff, I'm by no means known as a wrestler, and I stuffed a fair amount of takedowns when we were just wrestling. When we got close in the clinch, he had a lot of leverage, so he got me down a couple times there. But jiu-jitsu, he wouldn't even attempt to engage with me in the jiu-jitsu game. Anytime he thought we were going to have to start grappling, his coaches were just telling him to get the fuck out of there. So I guess I don't know how good his actual jiu-jitsu is, but he didn't want to be there for sure. And then, like kicking, his kicking game is good. It's nothing fancy though. There's not anything that you've never seen before there. Like, I've been in there with guys where they, like Thiago Santos. It's a goddamn problem. Like, you don't know where it's coming from. It's crazy fast. It's super powerful. John's not like that. It's just he manages distance better than anyone I've ever been in there with, and he just shuts you down.
And strategically, he always comes with a very, very good game plan. He has a high fight IQ, and he comes up with a good plan on how to beat his opponents. But what I was going to ask you was about the power punching type scenario that you mentioned. You've been in there. You felt his punches. I mean, and how were they?
He's just not a power puncher. He doesn't put a lot. And I don't know if it.
Did he hurt you?
No, never. Not with any punches. Honestly, the one thing this is fun. I don't know if I've ever said this out like on air anywhere.
Well, please.
For like 6 months, I had a numb spot right under my belly button. He front kicked me so many times that it killed the nerves, like in the skin, where I had this just dead spot where I couldn't feel anything. And then when the nerves started to like grow back, it would just feel like every once in a while I'd just be standing there. And I get this flash where it felt like I was on fire, just in this one little, like a $50 size, where it would just, the skin would just be burning. And that was the worst. It was terrible.
So he's not that bad then. Do you know what I mean? He actually managed to numb your nerves.
Yeah.
Kill the nerve endings in your stomach.
In my stomach,
Yeah. Something tells me you want to fight that guy again pretty badly.
Yeah, I would like to. It's not even the loss. It's more
the challenge.
I just didn't perform the way I wanted to. So in my head, I feel like, did you ever have a fight or maybe had a loss where it's not even the loss that bothers you? It's that you didn't show up, or you didn't get a fair shake at it for whatever reason. That's how I feel about that one. Like the Glover fight, of course I want that back, but it's what it means. I think, getting close to the title. The Glover one doesn't keep me up at night. It is what it is. He beat me. The Jon Jones fight bothers me because I just feel like that wasn't me. And if I had showed up and he beat me and that's what I had to give, then, fair to him. You know what I mean? It is what it is, but yeah.
Well, I hope they make that, because that makes perfect sense.